Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to chat to you about the first Mistborn trilogy, Mistborn Era 1 by Brandon Sanderson. Very briefly, if I keep looking down here, is where my notes are. I actually wrote notes for this one, so there's a 40% 40? 40% chance we're going to be coherent, but we're not off to a good start, are we? um, yeah, I did mention briefly in my wrap up last week that I wasn't intending to originally do this video. There's a lot of Mistborn content out there, there's a lot of Sanderson content out there. And then once I finished Hero of Ages, I thought I might do a spoilery video on Hero of Ages. And then as I was sort of like jotting down a couple of notes of what I wanted to say, I realised that actually I have enough, just about enough to say about the trilogy as a whole, and that I could do this spoiler free for the trilogy as a whole. And you know what? Sure, there's a lot of content out there, but what's one more video? And I'm going to enjoy this, so yeah. Shall we just dive right in? Mistborn, for anybody who is unfamiliar, I'm not going to lie, until I started the first one, I had no clue what it was about. I knew it existed, I knew Sanderson was big, but this is pretty much the only Sanderson I've read other than a novella, so yeah. For anyone else who's unsure, Mistborn is about... It's basically about a group of ragtag rebels, I guess. Originally given, like, introduced to us as a thieving group, but they're basically a rebel group who are out to take down the Dark Lord, essentially. The tagline for the book is, what would the world look like if the Dark Lord won? So we're immediately thrown into this world where the Dark Lord has already won, the Lord Ruler, he's referred to in this. Within it, we have the Ska, who are basically the peasants. We've got the nobility, so we've got class division. Our rebels are all from the lower class Ska. And then we've also got this magic system within it which allows select few to use metals in various ways. But we'll get to that in a bit. So, first off, I've given all three books in the trilogy 5 stars. I'm not going to hide that. We're not going to keep that till the end. It's no big surprise. I wouldn't be doing this video if I hadn't. They are brilliant. I have been recommending them left, right, and centre to anyone who will take the time to pause and listen to me. It's really interesting. So we'll chat about plot first. And I promise, spoiler free. But yeah, the tagline for the first book is, what happens if the Dark Lord wins and we're now out to rebel and try and take down the Dark Lord. Now, I went into this thinking that that was it for the entire trilogy, but he's done it really interestingly, in which that's the tagline for the first book. That entire story is... The first book is almost its own self-contained story within itself. And then second book is a continuation, but going a completely different way. I didn't expect the first book to end the way it did and then be like, oh, I was expecting this end here at the end of book 3, not at the end of book 1. So you kind of finish book 1 thinking, well, where do we go from now? Like, okay, you've kind of left it on a kind of cliffhanger, kind of not. Like, it's resolved, but in a way that you could continue. Which, I'm not gonna lie, left me a little trepidatious. I was a bit like, oh... Are books 2 and 3 going to feel like afterthoughts? Are they going to feel like dragged out? No, you do not have to worry about that at all. Book 2 is its own, almost self-contained, but not quite as self-contained as book 1. There is a bit more of emergence between books 2 and 3, but still it's its own book, right? It can stand on its own. It has its own main plot within it. And yeah, I've lost my train of thought a little bit there. God, I really have lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this? Yeah, but no, it's its own book. And it doesn't feel like an afterthought. You get some series where you've maybe got like the first book that sold really, really well, and they're like, oh yeah, well you can do some more, and then it drags out a little bit. You can tell it didn't. Even whilst you're reading book two, it you can tell that Sanderson knew he wanted to get here. By the time you get to book three, you know Sanderson knew exactly what he was doing all the way along. It doesn't feel dragged out. It doesn't feel like an afterthought. Like it sold really well, so we gave you some extra money, so produce something else. And oh, right, okay, we'll give you this. It's definitely very well plotted out. Hey folks, editing Amy here. Just want to clarify one point. I do keep saying that these books are their own book, but you have got to read them in order. You can't go from book one, skip book two, move straight into book three. Likewise, I really wouldn't recommend starting on book two. You have got to read them books one, two, three as a trilogy. They are their own almost contained story, but they are so closely connected that you have got to read them together sequentially. All right. Very well. Sanders, he knew what he wanted from all three books before he was writing book one. You can tell that. Particularly by the time you get to the end of the third book, and you're looking back, going, the foreshadowing. Oh my god! It's like something will happen. You'll be like, what? How are they? Oh my god! That makes so much sense. Yeah, he mentioned it here, he mentioned it there, he mentioned it there, he mentioned it there. He has mentioned this thing so many times. How did I not see this coming? And yet it's not like he's retconned or anything. It's a spoiler, but not a spoiler. But a certain earring gets mentioned a lot. I mean, we see this earring in book one. We see this earring all the way throughout. And then something happens with it, and you're like, that is so obvious. How did I not realize this? And I thought maybe this is just me. Maybe it's just me not picking up on this. But a colleague was listening to the book at the same time, particularly this last book. We were basically coming into work going, oh my god, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And at one point there was 20 minutes between us because we were both listening to it. And it's like, how? And we were both, we'd be standing filtering samples, chattering away to each other, being like, oh, like, I bet this is going to happen. Oh, it'd be really cool if you could do this. And we'd be so close to what was happening, but so far off at the same time. Brandon Sanderson is a plotting genius. That is all. I'll end that incoherent part there. That is all. Brandon Sanderson is a genius when it comes to plot. I mean, I'm throwing my book about now and everything. So yeah, the next bit that is particularly noteworthy, I think that's the word I'm looking for. It'll come as no surprise, is the magic system and his magic building. I know when you get like the book tags and everything, Sanderson is one of the ones that's brought up so frequently about, your favorite magic system and all that sort of thing. And I now understand why. His magic system is incredible. It's solid. It's a hard magic system. I mean, it's solid. There are rules to it. And very frequently, as Vin, one of our main characters, is learning how to use this magic system, he's managing to explain it in such a way that it's exposition, but it doesn't feel like an exposition dump. And by the time she's sort of like gotten the grasp of it, me as the reader, I knew exactly how this magic system worked. I knew that if you burned this metal, this will happen. If you did this, that will happen. He's made it. It's so well fleshed out, and it makes sense. So the magic system is basically a select few who have had essentially a brush with death and unlocked their ability. They can ingest various metals, and then burn them. It doesn't really go into detail of how they burn it, but they can sense them within themselves and burn them. So basically, use them within them. And it's not a case of once the metal's there, that's it. You know, they can burn and use that metal up. So they've constantly got to be replacing and constantly ingesting metals, which is an incredible limiting factor. I think I loved that we've got a magic system that's not infinite. It's not, oh well, you can use magic, that's it. It has massive limiting factors. So the magic users are split into basically into two groups. You've got Allomancers and then the Mistborn. Allomancers can use one type of metal and only one type of metal. So if they burn steel, they can only burn steel. If they burn pewter, they can only burn pewter. They burn bronze, they can only burn bronze, and they can only do what that metal does. Each metal has a different attribute, so burning different metals gives different effects, and it's like that metal will only ever give that effect. So yeah, Allomancers, one trick ponies essentially. Really interesting. So we see several of these, and they can all play to their strengths. There are some physical abilities, some mental abilities. And then you've got Mistborn, who can use everything. There's the opportunity here, or not the opportunity, but this could be a bit of a pitfall for an author who, if an author's not careful, this could lead to an overpowered character that kind of makes all the rest of the cast redundant. But Sanderson managed to navigate this really well, particularly by introducing these limitations and inexperience, and, you know, really emphasizing that just because you can use something, yes, it definitely gives you massive advantages, but if you're not smart and clever about it, if you take them for granted, if you rely too heavily on them, they will be your downfall. So we've got these extremely powerful characters, but they never feel overpowered, and you never feel like the rest of the cast are just basically plot fillers. They do have purpose, they do have role, they are useful. Magic system, so well done, very, very well done. I'm gonna just keep calling Sanderson a genius, and I need to find another word, but for the time being, Sanderson is just continuing to be a genius. The next bit I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, let's go on to characters. We've brushed on this a little bit, but not really. The characters are wonderful. He's done such a well job of fleshing them out and making each individual character feel really distinct. So I listened to it. It was narrated by Michael Kramer, who just did an absolutely amazing job. Hats off to him. I can understand why he narrates as much as he does. I can understand why he's as a popular narrator as he is, because he did an absolutely wonderful job. Particularly with Sazed, which I believe, like, having gotten to the end of it, I'm like, okay, I can understand why that was definitely intentional. I'm not going to say much more on why that was intentional, obviously, because spoilers. But yeah, Michael Kramer did an incredible job. Anytime we're in the middle of a conversation, particularly when you've got bits of dialogue where it's not blah 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 said this person, blah 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 said that person. Anytime we're not specifically being told who's saying things, I still knew who was saying it, both through Michael Kramer's narration, but also just through the tone and the words that were used. Each character had their own distinct voice. They were so well thought out. There was never, I never felt confused about who was who, which in some books, particularly books with big casts, that can happen. I never got them confused. I adore most of them. I absolutely adore most of them. A few I want to just really take by the shoulders and just really give them a good shake. But again, that's just a really good sign. He's done really, really good job of character work, almost on par with Robin Hobb, which for me is high praise. So I'm not quite going to say he was a genius there, but he did a very, very good job with the characters. yeah, I listened to particularly the last book. I did most of my listening whilst I was driving or out walking, and you'd frequently see me, especially if I was out walking, in my headphones. Ba 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 ba. What the fuck? Ba ba ba. Oh, apologies for swearing. Ba 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 ba. Walking away. What on earth? Why would you do that? Or like driving. I was driving up the A9 a few weeks ago in the car, literally screaming at like screaming at the console, been like, what on earth? And you could just see drivers driving past, be like, okay, so glad I'm not going the same direction as she is. um, yeah, he's written characters out enough, and so he's fleshed them out that any action they take, as frustrating as it could be for me, I never questioned why they were doing that action. I just felt so. Let's take Elend. Um, who is very much a secondary character to begin with, but by the end, spoiler, you're going to see a bit more of him. I'm sorry. Elend can be really annoying. I do love Elend. I can understand where a lot of his behaviors are coming from, and that's what I mean by them being so well fleshed out. Elend will do something, and it won't be a case of, okay, he did that to drive the plot. Yes, it drove the plot. It got the plot to where it needed to be, but it also felt like a really natural move for Elend. Anything Vin does definitely feels like that is natural for that character. It never feels like they just did something for the sake of doing something. Everything made sense for who they were. I don't know what else I can say. I don't know how much more I can praise his character work, and that they are brilliant. I absolutely adored characters. I laughed alongside them occasionally. I definitely cried for them a couple of times. Yeah, I screamed at mostly Elend. I mostly screamed at Elend, but quite a few times. As the book's going, you in the first book you focus mostly on Vin, because she is our protagonist, she is our main character, and you get POVs from a couple of different other characters. You get to book 2, we add in a few more POVs, and then we get to book 3, we add in a few more POVs. By book 3, I got the 2 POVs that I didn't know I needed, but I'm so happy I got them. And I think having the multiple POVs, especially because at one point our characters are very well spread out, it helps. It just worked. It just worked really, really well. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to think of anything that didn't work for me in this series. I'm kind of drawing up blanks. Yeah. If you're going to read the series, so like I say, it's pretty much the only Sanderson I've read other than one novella. So, but I think, like, for me, it's been a really good introduction. I'm glad I didn't go into some of his chunkier books, which is not to say these are small books. They are not. The smallest one was, I think, like 25 hours of listening time, which I think equates to probably 500-600 pages, give or take. These are not small books. But they don't feel long. They read... I can't say if they read quick or not because I listen to them, but I suspect if I were to be reading them, I would fly through the pages. The writing style is really engaging. It never feels long and drawn out. He doesn't spend too long being overly descriptive, but at the same time, it never felt like anything was completely glossed over. I think he got the pacing really, really well. Let's see. Did I put anything else in my notes? The only other thing I've written in my notes is just a brief note. The one negative, and it's so petty, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the plot, and absolutely nothing to do with the book itself, is that I live in the UK, and I find our covers really boring. So I'm just going to pop up here what our current covers look like. They're very white, stylized, a little bit of colour throughout them. But I keep seeing pictures of what I think are the US covers. Now, I will correct myself if I'm wrong. I'll pop it up here, and if it's wrong, I'll say what it is down here. Maybe. I think these covers are just so much prettier. They're just so full of color, which I think suits this world so much. Except if you read it, it kind of doesn't. But you know what I mean. But yeah, anyway, I recommend this for absolutely everybody. Um, I think the writing style is just really accessible. It's not, if you've not read a huge amount of fantasy, I don't think you're going to feel too bogged down by it. Um, it's not like I'm throwing you right in the deep end with Tolkien. Um, but likewise, if you have read a lot of fantasy, it's not going to feel like you're being spoon fed anything. I think it's just, it's a really, I think it's just a really good, universally appealing trilogy. I am curious to start the next trilogy, but I'm going to wait a little while. I might start the Stormlight Archive first, or Elantris. I'm not 100% certain. I definitely, absolutely, I'm going to read more Sanderson. Yeah, I can see why he's a favorite author of everybody, and I think, yeah, he's very much going to become a favorite author of mine. And yeah, I said at the start of the video, 5 stars for absolutely everything. 5 stars for the narration. I have nothing else to say, so I'm gonna wrap it up there. And yeah, I will see you in the next video, my next review or wrap up or whatever comes next. Ciao.